All right. And we're going to start, well, don't do purple, we'll do that. So this is lesson 1.3. Okay. And lesson 1 defined and classified real numbers used in Algebra 1. This lesson will define and discuss properties of real numbers. The properties are the foundations upon which the whole study and practice of algebra is built. In any construction endeavor, the building constructed is only as reliable as its foundation. This also applies to mathematics, and it's the reason that we study the properties. And so these are just some vocabulary here that you'll want to know, okay? And so some of them at first are going to seem like, well, yeah, but you need to understand that this is how addition, subtraction, multiplication works, okay? So this first one right here is called the commutative property, okay? And it says that if I took 2 plus a number, 3, it's going to equal 5, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be the same as if I turn it around. 3 plus 2 still equals 5, okay? So up here, that's what it's stating here. It says that if I just turn it backwards, it's the same. And then, since we're in algebra, we have letters also. So it doesn't matter what numbers I picked. Down there I picked 2 and 3. But up here I could pick any 2 numbers, and if I add them, then I switch them backwards. They're going to add up to the same thing, okay?
Okay.
All right? And that's called the commutative property, okay?
All right.
Okay. I just deleted everything and I was getting nervous. Okay, let's try getting rid. I think I'm getting rid of that stuff down there. Okay, now here we go. Now we're going to talk about the associative property. And the associative property deals with 3 numbers instead of 2. So here, if I have 3 numbers, I can add those 3 numbers in any order. I can take the 3 and the 5 and then add the 7, or I can add the 5 and 7 and add the 3. So this is taking the commutative property from 2 numbers over to 3 numbers.
And they will all add up the same.
And add up to the same thing. Okay. And so I can do that with, and they put letters in so that just show that I don't have to use 3, 5, and 7. I can use any numbers, and I can add them in any order.
Okay.
Okay. And they put the parentheses in there to show you that I do those first, or I do those first. Okay?
All right.
And you're going to get the same answer. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now we're going to go to the identity. 0 is the fancy number that goes with the identity. Okay. So if I take 0 and I add it to any number, it's going to keep its identity. It's going to stay how it was before. And so I add 0 to anything, it keeps its identity. It keeps who it is.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they just, again, in algebra, use a letter to state that you can do this with any number, not just 8. Let's move to the inverse now. Inverse, the word inverse means it's going to be like backwards or opposite. And so if I take a number and I add its inverse, it's going to turn into 0. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Both of these had 0 in it. Okay? This one has 0 as the answer to an addition problem. This one has 0 that I'm adding to it. Okay?
Right.
All right. So when they're going to have a 0 in some of your homework, and you need to realize that the one, when it's adding 0, it's identity. When you equal 0, it's the inverse.
Okay.
All right?
Got it.
All right. So if I did this problem, what would be the answer?
62.
62. And based on these properties that we just did, which property would it be?
The inverse property.
Yes, because I equaling 0.
Right.
Okay. So if I had 4,897 plus what equals that same 4,897?
0.
And then what property is that?
The identity property.
That's right. And so if I have this one over there, so we'll go 2 plus, I'm sorry, am I wrong? 45 plus 21 plus 5, and I decide to do those 2 first, it's going to be the same as what plus 21 plus 5, if I put the parenthesis there.
Can I see that number? 45.
Yes,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Made a line.
Yes, I did. You're fine, you're fine. Yes, so it would be 45.
And it'd be the associative property.
Very good, very good. Okay, so I think you got it.
Yeah.
Let's do this last one.
Okay.
We have 43
I made a line.
It's okay. I can get it. It's no big deal. Plus what equals 89 plus 43?
89.
Yes, and what property is that one?
The commutative.
Very good.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The only difference in these is we got properties of multiplication and we had properties of addition. They're similar in words, okay? So, same idea works here with this one. I've got, if I just switch it around,
Yeah, it's the
same thing, right? So I do 2 times 3, that's 6, and 3 times 2 is 6. It doesn't matter what order I do it in, okay?
Right.
Associative is the same thing. I took 3 numbers. I can multiply them in any order, and it doesn't matter. You get the same answer.
Okay.
It's still the associative, okay?
So it's basically the same thing as addition.
Exactly. Now, this one with identity is slightly different because 0 is not the identity with multiplication.
Right, it's 1.
It's 1. So it keeps its identity not by adding or not being multiplied by 0, but multiplying by 1. Okay?
Okay.
And the inverse, also, excuse me, the 0 property is new. Let's go back to the inverse one because it's similar to what you had before, right here. So, if I want, before when we had the inverse, we wanted to cancel it out to be 0. Well, to cancel it out to be 0 is not what we do with the inverse. We actually turn it into 1. And so the inverse for multiplication is the reciprocal.
Right.
Okay. So if I had like 1/2, the reciprocal will cancel out in the sense to make it 1. So if I multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2, then I'll get 1. So these are called inverses of each other.
All right.
Okay?
Got it.
Now the 0 property, this is a really cool property. Right now it's going to seem super obvious, but in a little while when you do some stuff in down the road in algebra, you're going to use this. And so the way you can get 0 when you're multiplying, the only way you can get 0 when you multiply is to have 0 as one of the factors in there, okay? And it's the only way it works. The only way you can get 0 out here is if you have a 0 in the problem itself,
all right.
okay? And so multiplying by 0 is turning it into 0. And you've learned that, and that was your easiest multiplication table that you learned.
Yeah.
It's just 0 all the time. And it seems pretty simple, but you're going to use this property later on in your algebra, okay?
All right.
All right? And so let's do a couple problems. So if I, with multiplication, want to do 7 times what equals 7, what goes in there?
1.
1, and what property did we use?
The identity property.
Yes. And since we had 2 different kind of properties, you had the property of addition and the property of multiplication, when you do these on your homework, you're going to have to state that it's the identity property of multiplication or of addition,
okay.
so that we know which one it is, okay, because since there's 2 of them, they're the same.
Right, okay.
So then if we go to this one and we say, what times 4.3 equals 4.3 times 2.9, what goes here?
2.9.
2.9, what property was that?
The commutative property.
Very good, very good. And so, I think you're going to get this. Let's do this one here. 16 times what equals 1?
16.
16
Wait.
times...
1 over 16?
Very good, 1 over 16, the reciprocal. And what property is that one?
The inverse property.
Very good, I think you got it. And so, we're done with this lesson.
Oh, wow, that was
Yeah,
quick.
pretty quick.